Architecture tells me where we are. It tells me who we are. And it really identifies the character of a city. You can look at buildings and know immediately what the location is. And to me, that's identifiable. That's art, and it's city's art. It's a country's art. When we chose Foster & Partners, another key element to them was their understanding of old and new and being able to create identifiable buildings that really expressed and made visible the city's identity. The One will very much do that, where you can look at the One on its own and know it's Toronto. It's the same way that you look at the CN Tower and you know that it's Toronto. This is incredible just to see the work and the details that's gone into creating the residential units, creating the building, creating the entire space that you're going to live in.
Sam is one of those unique clients that has very strong ideas, very engaged in the design process. He came to the studio nearly 3 years ago now, and our approach to design and visualizing architecture, he understood. And every time I meet him, we're on the same level, and we're smiling because we know we're just as excited and we're just as engaged, you know, every time we talk about design, every time we talk about the building.
You live in these spaces and you start to see all the different components of where the creativity comes from,
right,
and how you actually wear it. That's incredible to see the work that's gone into this.
This building is not just a building, and people happen to live there. The people are just as important as the building itself.
And so we started with the design of the individual flats and tried to think about what it would be like to come home there every day. And then from that began to build out what our floor plate design would be and then how you get through the building.
So sometimes we put design and physical things secondary to the experiential, because essentially what we're trying to do is make people's lives better. This is where you can start to hear the music and get the feel of what it's really going to be like to live there.
This is a great shot of how it incorporates, and you start to see inside the homes. I mean, it's all details. Yeah. It's all form and function and art.
I think what struck me about Sam is that, you know, he was a man who had a vision. He had a vision about what he could create on this particular site. You are at this kind of critical junction of the city where Yonge and Bloor meet, and you do feel you are in the centre, you know, not just of the city, but of kind of Canada. Toronto has a very distinctive skyline. Obviously, the CN Tower is the reference point. I think we're creating a kind of a second focal point. Our immediate reaction was one should celebrate its focal point, and we can do that very, very positively by introducing, obviously, a structure of significant scale. It's a heroic endeavour to build a tower of this size, and we should celebrate it, to be very expressive with its frame, to articulate the tower, particularly with the slots that are the mechanical services, which give it a rhythm as you rise up through the height of the tower, which is, again, unusual because most of the towers in Toronto are kind of what we call straight up and down towers.
When we first started the brief was never build the tallest building. The brief was he wanted to have the best building and that it had to be that the whole way through. Sam made it very clear that this was a building where every bit of it had to be uncompromising, right down to the point that at the base of the building he wanted the whole space open for really world-class retail. And normally when we do a building, you'll have the core and it runs down through and it ends up providing a huge amount of the structural support for the building. And so the very first bit of the brief was that just has to come out. Then that really led us to a challenging design of, well, how are we going to develop a building that could be entirely clear span at the base and also be the tallest building in Canada. And that's the kind of design brief that you just live for. If that doesn't excite you, you're in the wrong industry.
So as we were developing the projects for the One, we had the ability to model them three-dimensionally in the computer and then print them three-dimensionally. And we can generate those models very, very quickly, so we can test different ideas, different structural forms, different massing arrangements, and that's kind of key to how we interrogate our designs and understand whether they're working visually, but also in the wider context of the city.
The One's going to be the last piece of the cluster that happens at Yonge and Bloor, and that's a responsibility we take very seriously. People are very excited about what's going to happen here, and not passively so. really asking lots of good questions and really invested in their community and where they're going to be.
And what you're seeing with the One in every sense is really the voices of the city coming together and speaking as one unified voice to create something that's going to be an iconic landmark to identify Toronto and Canada as a world voice and the presence of an iconic landmark in the classes of what we see around the world.